journey of two friends, two best friends, who started accidentally, who met with an idea accidentally, and research, plan on it, executed it, grew together, and consequently failed miserably in this startup. I think this startup would give you a fresh perspective to my fellow buddies, entrepreneur buddies, and for the upcoming CEOs. So let's start with this story. The story is of the Indian startup Doodhwala. So as the name depicts, it is a startup which was founded by two friends, Akash Agrawal and Ibrahim Akbari, who started this startup in 2015 in Bangalore. And the startup type is hyperlocal delivery startup. So let's come to the concept. What was the concept of this startup? It was a very simple concept. It was a it was a delivery system, uh, door-to-door delivery system, and it followed a D2C model, direct to customer model, and the delivery was of unadulterated milk, and the delivery should be before 7 p.m. and the price should be below MRP, and the delivery should be like a free of cost. This was a simple solution on their startup. Let's take the BTS, like behind the story of this startup idea. Like what happened on a night of 2014. This the friends were munching on cereals with milk, and suddenly they found out late night that they were out of milk, and they wondered like they were out of milk, and there was a dilemma case, like now where to find, as they were hungry. So where to find a milk, that as the shops are closed right now. So they wondered, at that time accidentally they got an idea, like if their app should, if there comes an app which delivers milk, so what would be that case, what would happen. So they saw a huge potential in this unorganized dairy sector of India with a huge margin also. So they got an idea on this. They researched for few weeks, surveyed on in their locality with the Doodhwalas, with the grocery stores, and they found out that this idea has a huge potential. And after working for months, they tested their beta version of app, and it got lit. This idea of hassle free home delivery of milk was lit, and they, after that, they launched the Doodhwala startup with a tagline of India's largest fresh milk delivery app. So after few strikes, they got a funding of as this idea was a hit at that time in 2015. They got a funding in two rounds of $2.4 million from Tom Workey and Omnivore as depicted. So after taking the funding, how the startup grew, what's how it exponentially risen up. So the delivery of their startup from one type of milk increased to like 70 types of milk, also with fruits, vegetable, and groceries. Their team size increased from 5 to 400 within just 3 months, and within just 3 months, at that time, it was the largest India's largest subscription-based e-grocer. They started from Bangalore, but they spread eventually in Hyderabad. They expanded to Pune also. You will be shocked to know that they used to sell 30,000 liter milk a day, and 60% of it comprised of only Bangalore. Their growth was exponentially high with 250% growth rate in their customer base, and their valuation was around rupees 300 crores in 4 years. Why this picture now I have shown you? Like as you see in the story, that story was of an iceberg. If we compare to iceberg, that 20%, the story was just 20%, which you saw from above. Main 80% story was below the sea level, like what was below going on in that startup, what was actual behind the story. So let's come to that. Like this behind the story took them to the failure. Like a reason for the failure are like they were burning too much cash. There was a cash crunch. Like they were just spending crores of money in this 4 years. They were just spending with negligible or zero profits, you can say. They were operating on very low margin. Their outflow was higher than inflow. That is, there was no profit, you can say. Acquisition cost of customer was too high. What is this? Like, they used to give a packet of free milk, one who shares their app. Again, they were also giving 500 rupees of free milk a month to a customer who joins new. Also, they were giving a cashback of 250 rupees who downloads their app. So around they were spending 750 rupees on per customer. So their acquisition cost per customer was too high. The business model was very expense centric. That I think they didn't plan for the profit. They planned for expense centric, and like they were like I think they were just planning to make customer happy and give them service as possible. After that, there was no clear competitive advantage, as the idea was very unique at that time. But afterwards, their competitors like Ninja Cart, like Big Basket, like Grofers, they came into the market and they were also giving the same thing with lots of best service and with lots of discount. So as we know in India, like in India or in any everywhere, the customer is of the company who gives or provides more service and more discount. So at that time, there was their USP was not really USP. They didn't had any unique selling point at that time, which also was the reason for their failure. And in meanwhile, they were over dependent on investors. So they were not dependent on profit for expansion. They were dependent only on investors for growing. So this was the major reason for the failure. Uh, and the consequences after that were like they didn't receive fresh rounds of funding from investors. Like if investors, as we know, investors don't see profit, then they won't provide the funds in the next third or fourth round. Their employees, several 60, 70 employees were left unpaid at that time. Many vendors, merchants like Doodhwala, जिनसे वो दूध लेते थे, like the people, like companies from which they were taking, they had the tie-ups. There were unsettled dues at that time, and the dues cost around 6 to 7 crores, and there was unsettled dues. At the time also, customer ID was not working, money got stuck into their wallet, so there was not a customer good service also. The customers were unhappy at that time. After this incidents, like several FIRs were filed by employees like their marketing head and other the protests were also held in Bangalore city. Large protests was there against this company in which vendors, merchants, employees, everyone participated against the Doodhwala. Like it is today also considered a fraud. Like there are several cases also going on the founders. And finally in 2019 it closed its operation in 2019 and handed over its customer base to fresh to home, that startup. So these were the consequences. So what are the learnings from this? What learnings we can take so that when we initiate our startup or when we initiate a startup and also help any startup to grow, what learnings we can take? Learnings are like the inflow should be greater than outflow. It is simple concept. पैसा आने वाला हमेशा ज्यादा होना चाहिए जाने से. That is equal to profit, as we know. Prefer quality over quantity. Like one time they were just hiring people, uh, not on basis of quality. They were just quantitizing their base of employees, and they were hiring in that matter. And this HR policy, this was a failed HR policy also in their company. Avoid over dependency on investors. This is absolutely a very crucial point of learning. Like investors is like a namak. खाने पे जो नमक होता है उसकी तरह इन्वेस्टर का काम होता है. नमक का खाना नहीं होता, खाने पे नमक होता है. So it should taste to your stomach, replace your food. The next learning was they have done the demo test and made it profitable first in the demo round, and then they fully start their startup. This can also be done. And whether it is like we are MBA students or we are budding entrepreneurs, so whether it is people or startup, continuous upgradation with time and competition is much needed. So this is the learnings we can take from the story. As we can see, this is just a graph of every startup or business. Like initially, there is an introduction stage. Like these are 4 stages of any startup or business, you can see. Initially, the introduction stage is there where you cannot expect any profits. There are very low profits, negligible profits with high cost, expenses, and low sales also. Then the startup slowly grows as we upgrade with time and with the customer feedbacks and all, increasing sales, reducing cost, some profits we can see at that time. Then it comes to a range of like maturity stage where the sales are consistent. You can see the customer base is honest with you. Then reduce cost effects. You can also reduce the cost, and increasing profit. You can increase the profit. You can expect profits at larger level. After that, there comes a decline phase. Now it's upon us, like how long can be the decline phase, how according to the time. On the time you can see on x-axis, according to time, it's upon us, how long can be the decline phase. It's upon us to reduce the decline phase and instantly and working on it, and we can increase uh, to like expansion after we decline, from learnings what we take from decline. So what we learn from this story, the main crux of this story is like startup is not a 100-meter sprint race. It is a marathon. Simple सी भाषा में बताओ तो startup is not about being Virendra Sehwag, like hitting success from the first day or first ball. You can say startup is about being Rahul Dravid, where your patience, perseverance is examined, and at last, in this hustling, bustling market, the main thing tested is which startup is on the pitch in the long run. So this is all about we can learn from the story, the Doodhwala. Thank you.